This video is by Straight Goods News, SGNews.ca.
I think we always have to understand that cyber threats are real, cyber threats are going to exist, and you can't eliminate them. In fact, I can remember once having a very intelligent information technology person once tell me that the only time you have a 100% secure system is when you have a system with no users. And I think that's the case when you're dealing with cyber threats. You can't eliminate it, but it's important for the government in terms of its own systems to make sure that they understand the types of threats and that they can be in front of them as far as possible, or at least be trying not to lose ground. And that they have also, there would be a whole other suite of measures outside the scope of this audit, like contingency plans and those types of things that would need to be in place for dealing or reacting to those types of situations. So, again, when there was the particular incident involving the government's own systems, they did do a lessons learned. They did make some changes. We found that there still are some inconsistencies in roles and responsibilities, so they need to get those things fixed. But it's something that the government needs to be ever vigilant about, right? They need to be always thinking about this and trying to stay at least as current or up to date with it as they possibly can be.
Can you explain how it went from what was supposed to be 24/7 to 8 to 4? What exactly happened when it was put into practice? And can you give us an idea of how much information is collected and how much is not, given these hours and given the fact that you've got system operators and owners who are not even aware that they are supposed to be relaying this information?
I don't really have that level of detail. Right from the beginning, though, the center was not operating 24/7. It was operating 8 hours, five days a week, rather than 24/7. So I'm not sure, exactly what was the decision that said, okay, we want this 24/7 operation, but then it only started out as 8 hours a day. That's something that the department would have to explain to you. And again, sort of in terms of the amount of information that they're dealing with, it's not something also that I have available to me, but it's not just the amount of information that's important, it's the timeliness of that information, and that's why we raise questions about whether they're being brought up to date on situations as quickly as they should be.
Probably going to say to the Minister that, well, last week they announced $155 million for cybersecurity strategy. They've had a prevention strategy program in place for 10 years, but your report seems to suggest that perhaps that strategy isn't working. Is it a matter of just throwing more money at the problem, or what should they really be doing here to move this forward?
The one thing that we noted in particular was, and probably because you've got to remember that this threat has been evolving, right? So initially it was identified as a potential risk, but probably not one of the most serious risks. So what we found was early funding. It was hard to carve out how much of the early funding was intended to be just for cybersecurity. But if there are going to be amounts set aside to deal with cybersecurity issues that are specifically for that issue, then we think what's important is that there not just be the money set aside, but there be specific steps, specific things that money is intended to achieve, so that then it's possible to go back or to measure whether they're making progress. So there's the money, there are steps that need to be achieved, and there's timelines for achieving those things. All of that needs to be in place to make sure that if there's being money put aside for this issue, we can then follow it to see if it's achieving what it was intended to achieve and if it's doing that in the time frame that it was intended to do.